everyone. Welcome to this newest episode of our webcast and podcast, Marketing, Art, and Science. I'm CMO advisor and host Lisa Martin, and I'm so thrilled to share with you my next guest, Jennifer Johnson, or JJ, the CMO of Crowdstrike. JJ, it's so great to have you on the program. I know the audience is going to learn a ton from you today.
Oh, it's so good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure. And this is the webcast where we really kind of dissect the artistry and the fusion of science within marketing, within modern marketing. And we'll talk about things like JJ's background. We'll talk about MarTech in action at CrowdStrike. We'll then talk about AI and Gen AI and some of the amazing, really results-driven things that they're doing. And then JJ's going to leave us with some advice for aspiring CMOs. So JJ, you have such an interesting backstory. Share it with the audience a little bit about the family business and what inspired you to get into marketing.
Yeah. So I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So for those of you in the Midwest, I am a fellow Midwesterner at heart. My background is family business. So my grandfather, 80 years ago, started a level and tool manufacturing company called Johnson Level and Tool. So levels, if you don't know, are those things that have the bubbles in them that you use to make sure things are straight. And started that in Milwaukee again 80 years ago. Was an immigrant from Sweden. Started the company, built the company up. My dad and my uncle, they ran the company just up until about 5 years ago. We ironically sold the company to a Swedish company. So my grandfather came over from Sweden. We wound up selling it to a Swedish company. So fun full circle story.
Yes.
But it was the earlier years of my life, and so a lot of my early memories were actually in the plant, in the factory. And so a couple things that it really taught me a good work ethic, because work was so ingrained. And if people from Milwaukee, in the Midwest in general, I always say they're salt of the earth, and having a good roll up your sleeves work ethic is part of the DNA of the Midwest, and especially the blue collar industrial cities like Milwaukee. And so kind of really learned that, like, having a really good work ethic and grit from a very young age. And then the other thing that it really ingrained, probably not even realizing it at the time, is that family and business were intertwined. And so there wasn't really a separation. It was just all part of one and the same. And, nowadays we talk about things like work-life balance. And I'm definitely not here to say that work-life balance is not a thing, because I think for many people, work-life balance is a very important thing. So I think for me, it's more about integrating your work and your life together instead of compartmentalizing them separately, because the way I grew up, they were so intertwined. And look, I think there's positives to that. I think there's probably some challenges to that too. But I think the positives are more that you really think about work is not something that you just go and do and come home and forget about it, right? It's really something that, you bring into your life and you make it as part of your life. And I very much am passionate about what I do, and I can't do it unless I'm really all in, and mentally and physically and everything. So for me, when I go into a job, it's all in, because that's really all I know.
You make such a great point that it's really the integration. We're going to be talking about the integration of art and science, but the integration of the work and the life, because these days we have, how many screens do I have in front of me right now?
Yeah.
Probably you as well. We're just connected all the time. And we have that expectation that we are going to be connected. We can collaborate. We can have these conversations. We can move things forward. Talk a little bit about how you got to be the CMO of CrowdStrike. Obviously, I just saw that you guys just hit the S&P 500 recently. Huge accomplishment there. Congratulations. But give us kind of that backstory of how you landed at CrowdStrike.
Mm-hmm. So I've been in enterprise software for marketing for 20 plus years. Started in product marketing. So my formative years were definitely spent in more of the technical sides of marketing. Became a CMO. So expanded out, became a CMO, been a CMO for about 10 plus years now. Not all in cyber, but at some point I pivoted over into cyber. And so most of my CMO career has been spent in cybersecurity companies. And I think along the way, I mean, obviously being in cybersecurity, you know CrowdStrike. And I've worked, with or one degree of separation from a lot of the people who have been at CrowdStrike since the beginning and close to the beginning. So it kind of felt like a first cousin, if you will, right?
Yeah,
There was a lot of
yeah,
familiarity there already. And
that's
so,
nice.
yeah. And I think when we're all going through our careers, we stop and we think about, what do we want to do? Is this, is this, is for me, do I want to be, do I want to do something outside of being a CMO? Do I want to work outside of cybersecurity? And I think where I ultimately landed at a point was, I like being a CMO. I like the function of marketing, and I want to be a CMO. And I really love cybersecurity because it's very mission driven and purpose driven. And it really is about doing something that's kind of for the greater good, if you will.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I said, I want to be a CMO in cybersecurity. That's what I want to do for the rest of my career. And
I
so
love it.
I'm pretty much at I don't think I could have picked a better company. I
No.
couldn't have picked a better company to do that, knowing that that was my personal mission and goal. So, when I had the opportunity to come in and work for CrowdStrike, I leapt at the chance to be able to work with this company and with the people
Yeah.
and with our great technology and our amazing customers.
Yeah, amazing customers. I met you at Falcon last year, which, if you're not familiar, that's CrowdStrike's user conference, and we had some great customer conversations. I think there's so much value in the voice of the customer, really articulating the brand proposition of the company. But cybersecurity is such an interesting topic because it affects everybody. The
Hmm.
threat landscape is so amorphous; it's evolving constantly.
Yep.
Ransomware became a household word, so you are in such an interesting time, but also delivering technologies that are saving brands. So
Yeah.
we could do a whole
Yeah.
show on cybersecurity. But I want to now get into the MarTech stack because you got to um, CrowdStrike about 18 months or so ago, and you kind of
Yeah.
had not a blank slate to work with, but
Yeah.
walk us through what you inherited and some of the things that weren't there that you said, we've got to change this. We've got to bring in the scientific part. We've got to
Yeah.
become data driven.
Yeah, and we talked about this. I think the title of this show, Art and Science, is so perfect because I talk about that a lot. Around everything is art and a little bit of art and a little bit of science. And if those of us in marketing, some of us have probably heard someone along the way say that marketing is arts and crafts, or used to be arts and crafts, which I,
Yeah.
by the way, take offense to. I don't love hearing that because
Right.
even the
Yeah.
art side of marketing is a little more than arts and crafts. But
Yeah.
the point, I think, was probably coming from a good place of that it was a lot more of the art side. And over the last 10 15 years, the science side of marketing has become so much more of not the dominant piece of it, but it's become so much more dominant because now you can
Yes.
measure what you do, right? And it's
Yes.
not a little bit of okay, we think it did this, and or we know it had an impact, we just can't completely measure it. So you need to fuse the two together. So it's not an either or, it's an
Right.
and you need to do both, but you also need to bring both together. So, at CrowdStrike, our brand has always been a strength of us as a company, and that's beyond marketing. It's everything. It's every touch point with the company. But marketing has done an amazing job well before me on really building the brand and bringing a persona around the adversaries and the bad guys. And really, for me, it was, how do we continue to kind of carry that torch forward? But I saw a real opportunity to invest in the science side of it, right? And we're a multi-billion dollar ARR company. We have 28 products on our platform. We work with every segment in every industry, of companies. And so that becomes really complex really quickly. And so art isn't going to get you where you need to go. We've been very public with the street on our path to get to 10 billion in ARR. That doesn't happen with art alone. So
Right.
we have to really think strategically and thoughtfully about the whole customer journey. How are we bringing
Absolutely.
new customers in? But that's really the kind of the starting point, if you will, right? It's then, how do we get customers to expand logically around the platform? And when you have 28
Right.
products, there's a lot of different paths that customers can take. And ultimately, the goal is to consolidate on our platform. So you really need the science on that part. And so, it wasn't a blank slate, but what I really looked at when I came in is, how do we modernize our tech stack? How do we
Yeah.
modernize our ability to be data driven? How do we use data? And now data science and AI is like a whole nother element to it, but like, how do we bring data in to help us be more predictive around where to focus? And I think that's been a huge value in what we've done with just even taking the tech stack as an example is being able to bring that notion of AI and machine learning into the marketing tech stack. And so, one of the tools that we brought in about 18 months ago now is 6 Sense. So for those marketers, you probably know 6 Sense. And really that was really instrumental, not just to marketing, but to our sales development team that are doing the prospecting, because again, we sell to millions of organizations. We sell to every company potentially on the planet. Every company on the planet is a potential customer. So
Absolutely.
where do you focus? And we have, hundreds of thousands of people coming to our website, being able to get the insights and the data and the signals on intent, it really helps to almost create that funnel, before the sales cycle really even starts, of where do we focus and what messages do we send? Because you can
Yeah.
actually tell, like, you can tell what they're in the market for, and you can tell where they are in the buying cycle. So you can like be very, very targeted with the message, with the offer, um, with the product area. And then, that's one big piece of the equation, is how do we be more strategic about who we're bringing in. And
Yeah.
then now we're really layering in data science and the tech stack to be predictive around their propensity to buy and what the next best product is. So that's like a whole nother journey now that we're taking on, is, what, there's 28 products, right? They could easily, I mean, we know where the logical growth paths are and where the logical
Right.
next step is, but based on who they are, based on their behavior, based on what they're doing with the technology, kind of bringing in that PLG-esque kind of motion of how, like, where do we actually help guide them. So that's been a really big initiative, very impactful initiative, in the company and in the team, and really giving marketing a seat at the table of bringing the data to the conversation. And I think that's a big part of it too.
And that's
Bringing the
pretty
data.
differentiating too.
Yeah.
You mentioned when we were speaking before that you brought data science to the sales team, and to become, so many organizations say we're data driven, or we're working to
Yeah.
become data driven. It's a whole other ball game to actually be living it and
Yeah.
having the impact that you're talking about, the proof in the pudding. Share
Yeah.
a little bit about how 28 different products,
Yeah.
customers at different parts of the journey, hundreds of thousands. You talked about the horizontal applicability and impact that CrowdStrike has in every industry. What's that journey like from prospect to loyal advocate to expansion? And how does
Mhm.
the MarTech stack and those levers of art and science help really
Yeah.
customers go on that journey seamlessly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think anyone who's in this field knows that there's been a lot of data around the percentage of the sales cycle that's done before anyone ever talks to a human being, right? And
Yeah.
so we have front loaded a lot of our top of funnel, as you would expect, with digital, digital retargeting, using, social media and paid social and digital to really like hone in and like follow people through that kind of that front end of the journey. Um, Peer review sites. So there's a whole team that's really a growth marketing team that's digitally focused, that's really focused on driving the right journey before they even get to an SDR, right? Which is, they're the kind of the first person that they would
Yeah.
talk to help prospect. So there's a whole like marketing tech stack around, digital retargeting. 6 Sense plays a key role there, because we can obviously, as I said before, we can actually see what people are searching on, what their intent is, what they're searching on from a product, or what kind of initiatives they have, where they might be in the buying cycle based on their behavior. And so we do all that to nurture and basically nurture these prospects, and even help the SDR team say, if you have 100 people that you can spend time with and call on, who are you going to focus your time on? So that's one whole piece of it. And then it's, of course, we get them into a cycle. I think that becomes a little bit more, it goes from digital led to maybe more in person and physical led. It's an
Okay.
interesting conversation that we're having as a marketing organization right now. How do you move people kind of from that early stage pipeline opportunity to a kind of later stage? What we're seeing is that this is where you would want to put in more of your in-person events, your workshops, and they don't always have to be in person. They can be
Right.
virtual, but more
Right.
hands-on things where they can actually feel, touch, experience the technology, talk to other customers. Our user conference obviously plays a big role in this phase here, right? To help bring people along. We talk about it as the power of the crowd, and it's real when people feel the magic of you
Oh
know,
yeah.
the momentum we have, and you were at Falcon last year, like it's
Yeah.
real. Um, and then once they become a customer, there's, typically a logical land. I mean, we obviously try to get that land as big as possible, but there's typical product set that usually is in that land in that first initial deal. And then it's looking at data science to say, okay, customers that look like this, that behave like this, that use the product like this, tend to, this is tend how they tend to expand. Or this is your typical PLG, using analytics, using data science around, the propensity to buy, to say like customers that look like this, they might, buy 10x more. Because I was CMO of a company named Amplitude that does exactly this, right? It helps you with digital analytics to actually understand what customers are most profitable, what customer journeys are going to actually net the most revenue. So those are the things we look at. So we kind of tailor the digital and the tech stack with the in-person events that help educate customers on expansion. And of course, customer storytelling is woven
Yeah.
throughout that entire journey. I think the last thing I'd say is, having data. This is less about the tech stack and more about the analytics. I
Right.
think one of the biggest things that we've done that has transformed in a very positive way are, and we had a great relationship with sales, like we've always had a great relationship with sales, but one of the things that transformed it the most was marketing, and in particular field marketing, coming to the table with data. So,
Mm.
many times it's like the activity trap that field marketers can fall into, where
Yeah.
if they don't come with a point of view, if they don't come with data, a lot of times it turns into, what do you want to do, sales team? And sales team, will give them their wish list of all the things that they want to do. And there's good intent, right? But, at the same time, like, they're not marketers. And if you support 20 salespeople, you're going to get 20 different iterations of a plan. And then all of a
Yep.
sudden, the field marketer is looking at it going, how am I going to execute all of this? Because there's no way. And then you fall into this activity. I call it the activity trap, right? And then it's
Yeah.
more is better, right? That's not, more is not better. We hopefully know that as marketers. So this flipped it completely on its head, where now field marketing can come to the table with data. We track pipeline. We have pipeline goals by all the way down to a rep level, and we have pipeline goals that we work with rev ops to set by week. So every week that our field marketers can go to their sales teams and say, okay, here's where you're doing a great job in building and converting pipe. Here's where you have some weaknesses. They can get it granularly down to an individual rep, say, hey, this rep might be having some challenges, what's going on? And that allows us to rapidly, shift our investment where we need to kind of help adjust to fill those gap areas. But it also drives a different discussion, because we're
Yeah.
leading the discussion in the places where the business needs it to go to, not because the sales leader, with all the best intentions they have, is coming up with their wish list of things, right? And so, I mean, it's not only given marketing a seat at the table to drive the right discussion, but the sales team obviously appreciates it too,
Yeah.
because we're coming with something of value to them. And so it's really transformed that whole relationship. And I believe that, field marketers are, a really important piece of the equation. And I think with, COVID, there was a lot of discussion about everything's going to move to digital. What's the future of field marketing?
Right.
What we're seeing is you still need, and it's not just about running events, but you still need, like, in person. You need
Yes.
in person. You need a combination of digital and physical events and programs. And so, how you bring those things together and do it in the right way to support the business, field marketing then becomes the CMO of their territory instead of the event planner.
Oh, I like that. That's awesome. The synergies that you're describing that marketing has with sales at CrowdStrike is unique. I talk with a lot of CMOs. I'm fortunate to have this position, and some of them really nail the sales and marketing relationship. I've seen CMOs that own the SDRs, for example. But what you're doing to really create this individual pipeline and leverage the data to help sales sell better is marketing really leading the company in
Yeah.
terms of helping to influence and generate revenue that you can actually track.
That's
which is
right.
huge. All
That's
about
right.
generating revenue at the end of the day, right?
That's right. It is. I mean, like we love the work that we do with our brand. It's amazing. It makes everybody feel really good, and that affinity does wind up translating to revenue at some point because we do a Super Bowl commercial. People love seeing that the company that they're investing in is a
Yeah.
Super Bowl advertiser. It makes people
Yeah.
feel better and more confident in their decision. Ultimately, everything we're doing is to drive revenue. We're a for-profit company, right? I mean,
Yes.
but at the end of the day, like you have to bring those two things together. I think the other thing that we've done a really great, or, we're continuing to do a really great job of is fusing the art and science together, bringing brand and demand together. So, when you have that amazing brand campaign, when you see that Super Bowl ad, it's not just wow, they just did a Super Bowl ad and then went away. It's connecting the storytelling from that ad all the way through to the storytelling they see when they go to the website, they go to digital, and connecting the brand story to the platform and product story. And
Yes.
that sounds logical, but sometimes it's not done. And
Oh, right.
sometimes, a lot of times it's not done, right? Where you have a brand message and you have a product message and they don't necessarily logically connect, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
people have to do like what I call the mental math, right? To connect the dots, right? To
Yeah.
connect those two stories together. We make it a much more seamless connection between brand and platform.
It's integrated, yes. I'd love to just kind of double click on the Super Bowl commercial a little bit. We've talked a lot about the science and the foundation,
Mhm.
how you've brought data science to sales, the individual pipeline creation that's really data driven. What was some of the artistry involved in getting that message out in the Super Bowl commercial? For anyone that didn't see it, I'm sure they can find it on YouTube. But I'd love
Mhm.
to just kind of get your like, what was the artistry and sizzle that really helped carry that brand message forward?
Yeah. So we've done two Super Bowl ads this last year and the year before. A couple things. And, the decision to do a Super Bowl ad, we believe that we have a responsibility to bring cybersecurity to the mainstream because
Yes.
it's such an existential threat to all of us as consumers. And as one of the largest companies that Super Bowl commercials are not inexpensive. We can, not everyone can afford to do it. We believe it's almost like carrying the flag for the industry in a way
Yeah.
to bring the importance of cybersecurity to everyone. And to do that to a mainstream audience, it obviously has to be a very, it has to be a simple, it has to be a relatable message. It has to
Yes.
tie it together in a way people can understand. So the first year that we did the Super Bowl ad, it was about taking an event in history, the Trojan horse, and actually tying it as the most infamous breach in history that people
Yeah.
can relate to, and tying it to what would have happened if they had CrowdStrike. So you're taking some
Oh,
some events that everyone hopefully knows of on some level and
yeah.
tying it to our technology. And even the words we used of how we described what we did, it was very simple. And so,
Yeah.
the average person could probably get it on some level. And the notion we stop breach, like it's not just the notion, it's our mission. It's not just a tagline, it's our vision, it's our mission. We stop breaches, that's what we do. And so we stop the most infamous, in that story, we stop the most
Yeah.
infamous breach in history, right? So now juxtapose that with the Super Bowl commercial last year, and we took it to the future, right? So we went from the
Mm.
past to the future, and it was a future, kind of a future Western, if you will, where we actually brought the adversaries, the bad guys, to life. And so these are actual, each of the adversaries, they were kind of the outlaws, the bad guys that kind of came into
Yeah.
the town, right? And there were four of them that represented actual adversary groups that we track. So one of the things we've
Okay.
done as a brand is we've put personas around hacking groups and e-crime groups and nation state groups, and given them personas. And that's how we that's how we track them, that's how we talk about them. So they have a look and a feel to them. And so we brought them to life in a very sinister way in the ad. And then our heroine Charlotte, so the other thing we did is we came up with, how are we going to put a persona to our brand around positivity and truth and wisdom and protection. And we came up with our cybersecurity heroine Charlotte, who was in both years ads. And so she kind of, comes in and saves the day, if you will. But in the
Yeah.
end, it's a story of good and evil. We're good, and the bad guys are, the adversaries are evil, and
Yeah.
that's the thing that people can relate to. And look, all of that is, how I said it is, if you don't know anything about cybersecurity and all you took away from it is that CrowdStrike is cybersecurity. When you think cybersecurity, you think CrowdStrike. That's a win.
That's a
If
huge
you
win.
are Yeah, if you're in cybersecurity and you kind of understood some of the more nuances of the story, like who these adversary groups were, the notion that it was a little futuristic, so it was bringing in AI into the ad in a way, right? And our technology is, part the human element of like our threat researchers and our threat hunters together with our technology and our AI driven technology, like bringing that together as part of our differentiation. So if you understand cybersecurity and technology, you probably got some of the more nuanced messaging in the story, but like there was something for everyone. And that's the beauty of storytelling, really.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and it makes people feel good.
It
I'm a
does. It
partner of
does.
CrowdStrike. I'm a customer of CrowdStrike. I'm an employee of CrowdStrike. I
Yeah.
am so proud that I'm affiliated with this company.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in the end, that's success.
Oh, totally. And we got that when like I said, when I met you at Falcon last fall, and just the voices of the customers really sharing not just stories of we're faster, we're more efficient, but really metrics driven outcomes is huge. I'm a huge fan of customer marketing and of customers really sharing it and with what they're doing, but how it's actually really impacting the business was
Yeah.
that was a great kind of theme that I think
Yeah.
we brought out of Falcon last year.
Yeah.
Last kind of section for you. You mentioned AI. I know that CrowdStrike is really leaning into Gen AI. Walk
Mhm.
the audience through what you're doing there because it's really remarkable and you've got results that are
Yeah.
demonstrating it's working, it's impactful.
Yeah. And so, well, AI as a company, AI has been in our technology since day one. And now we have generative AI in our technology. As a marketing organization, we are leaning heavily into generative AI to help accelerate how we work as marketers. So we have over 25 different use cases across the marketing organization right now that we're using ChatGPT for. And that's everything from things you would think about, like content creation. That's kind of the obvious one that marketers are using it for, to creating digital headlines for A/B testing, to best practices, planning templates, to it's writing our email copy for the SDRs, or editing content. It translations. It's kind of like there's a lot that we're doing across the
Oh
board.
yeah.
Um, One of the things that we did is we used it to help relaunch parts of our website. And the thing I would stress to marketers is it it does not replace humans. Full stop. You can use ChatGPT, and there's even a little bit of an art in ChatGPT to, if you've used it, to you have to kind of ask the question and keep refining it and keep
Yeah.
asking and prompting it to get to the kind of the answer that you want. And so there's a little bit of art in that. And
Mhm.
then when you get the answer, there's refinement that has to happen after that. You're not going to get something and just copy and paste it and put it on your website and say that's it, right? Like you
Right.
have to really like have the human like element to keep refining the messaging. But we were able to move. It went from months to a few weeks in terms of how fast we were able to move to kind of get some of these new areas of our site launched. And it's not only like the speed in which we're able to operate, the conversion. It's amazing the conversion improvement. So when people come onto our site, it's a much more rich experience. It's a much more engaging experience. They're finding the content they want. They're engaging with content more. And so we're proving that it works. And so that's my kind of my message, I think, to anyone out there is like, if you're like kind of resisting it consciously or not, don't resist it, because it actually does really help. And you can start using it with just basic things like, help me write this email. It
Yeah,
just takes like some things off of your plate that helps
it
you kind
does.
of accelerate things. I found that very useful. The other thing is, it doesn't replace humans. You still need humans for it.
Absolutely.
It can just help do your job faster. And so I'm a big believer. I'm seeing it work. And so I'm really driving this into the team, and the success breeds success. So when the team saw how successful this one team was in their project, and how much internal recognition they were getting, every team now all of a sudden is raising their hands. They want to be the next one to go, right? And they're like, we want to do it
Yeah.
now. And so it's contagious, right? And so we're seeing a lot of good initial success with it that we'll continue to use. So
That's outstanding.
yeah,
You talked about the website updates. You mentioned to me the other day that you guys are using it for A/B testing, but your proof is in the data. You talked about the impact of conversions alone
yeah,
is huge, and it's kind of going viral, no pun
yeah,
intended, within CrowdStrike. You're
yeah.
saying more teams are saying we want to be the next team to actually
That's right.
leverage Gen AI to
Yep.
make big impacts that ultimately impact
Yeah.
revenue. I think that's
Yeah.
a great message. I'm completely with you on the use of Gen AI for good. I use it a lot myself, and it's fun how you can interact with it to be creative. And I think as marketers in tech, I don't know if you
Yeah.
feel the same way, but I always feel like we have a sense of responsibility
Yeah.
to help get that message out there much more consistently about all the positive elements that are coming from AI
Mhm.
and tools like Gen AI, because there's so much fear factor out there in the general public that sees
Yes.
jobs being replaced, et cetera. You're saying, no, it's really humans and AI together. And I see that a lot with all the
Yeah.
companies that I talk with, and you just kind of embodied that as well.
Yeah.
Last question for you, JJ, is what advice would you have to somebody who is kind of following in your footsteps, wants to get to that CMO stage, um, based on kind of your backstory of how you got to where you are?
Yeah. Great question. I think that taking risks is really important, and taking calculated risks, because
Yeah.
people can take varying levels of risk based on, their life and their personal situations and all of that. But I think it's more about, when I say take risks, I think it's seizing opportunities as they come. Um, my first my first job in tech marketing was an internship at Veritas Software. I think we talked about this, and it was back in the early 2000s when all of the Enron, WorldCom, if you remember back then, all the corporate governance scandals were happening, and that really created all these regulations around data governance, data retention, data security, data privacy. Sarbanes-Oxley was the big one. HIPAA. There's
Hmm.
things that still exist today, right, from that time frame. And I worked at a data storage company, and so there was a lot of questions around, well, what does this mean for data storage and retention and backup and recovery and archiving and all of that because of these regulations. So my internship was to go research these regulations and figure out how to map the regulations to the value proposition of our technology, and build content around it. So I was doing my internship, and one day I got a call from my boss and said, "There is, our CEO is going on some broadcast. It was probably CNBC, some broadcast to talk about the impact of these regulations on the industry, and so he needs to get briefed." And that was a moment where probably my naivety probably worked to my advantage. That I said, "Okay, I'll go brief him."
Yeah. Yeah.
and so and so I went and briefed him and sent the briefing document, and it was great, and worked out really well, and I got a job out of it. So I
That's
think
awesome.
part of it is being prepared, right? They say, like, was it like luck is opportunity meets preparation. That probably
Yes.
was a bit of being lucky in that definition. But yeah, seizing those moments when they come to you and not being afraid, and taking
Absolutely.
risks. Sometimes, I've my path has sometimes taken it hasn't been a straight line. Sometimes it's kind of
Yeah.
taken a bit of a left or a right turn to, you kind of go laterally to move 5 steps
Sure.
forward. Right.
Sure. Yep.
And I think those things are okay. Like, if you really think about, like, how is this going to help me get to the next thing? And you think kind of like 2 steps ahead. That's how I always think. And not
I
everything
just do.
needs to be a linear straight line.
Right.
Sometimes going to the side is going to actually get you there faster, or get you to somewhere you didn't even know you wanted to go.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so that's when I talk about taking risks. It's taking risks. Sometimes you don't know what the outcome's going to be, but you have an idea.
Right.
And that I think that everyone I've talked to has that's been successful in their career has kind of had an element of that. Plus a good mentor. Get a good mentor.
Agree.
Everyone else has a
Definitely.
good mentor. Yeah.
Ah, that's such great advice. I'm with you on all of that, taking those calculated risks, being prepared, and just being open to possibilities, I think, is just what
Yep.
I would echo in terms of what you said. But JJ, it's been so great having you on the program. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us on Marketing, Art, and Science, sharing the foundations that you put in place, how you're bringing the data science to sales, how marketing and sales are so synergistic, and the use of AI and Gen AI within CrowdStrike's tools and marketing, and the impact that you're having to the business. This has been a fantastic episode. I'm sure the audience loved it. So again, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much it's great to be here. Thank you.
Excellent. We want to thank you for tuning in and remind you in 2 weeks, we drop another episode of Marketing, Art, and Science. So stay tuned. We'll see you then.